So, you may have heard of executive functioning, but do you know exactly what it is? Hi, I'm Dr. Roseann, and I'm a mental health trailblazer. And join me as we have real conversations about real solutions to kids' problems. And today, we're talking about executive functioning and how to help our kids pay attention better, get stuff done. How about that? Join me. We're going to dive in. So, what is executive functioning? You kind of maybe heard about it. Maybe it was mentioned. If you've got a kid who's been tested, it might be in one of those reports. Do you even know what it is? It's different than attention. Okay. So, let's start with that. So, attention is the brain's ability to alert. Executive functioning is the brain's ability to plan and prioritize for a future event or outcome, right? And when we talk about executive functioning, it's really a set of metacognitive skills. That's a fancy word for thinking skills. And it's how we think about thinking, right? How do we plan, right? So I'm great with executive functioning. I think in structure, right? When people talk to me, I literally am mapping out in a big picture way where do all these pieces fit in. I don't even need anybody to ask me. My brain just organized boop bop bop like a computer, and it does it. And in fact, it's my superpower. And I have this amazing team of therapists here in our center, and we work with people all over the world, and they are percolating with ideas, right? We are like a think tank extraordinaire around here. We always have these incredible ideas, and they're terrible with organizing their ideas. Like, if anybody doesn't know, I wrote 4 books in 4 months in the first part of the pandemic. And it literally is because I spent more time structuring, organizing, gathering the research, of course, than I did actually writing. I could just bang it out. And so our therapists, for example, they helped me write parts of our teletherapy toolkit, which is the first book ever written about teletherapy. Activities for children, right? So, and I was worried in the pandemic. I wrote that book. I was worried because when I was working with the therapist, they didn't have a resource. And I was like, oh, not everybody's as organized as me. I'll make a Google sheet with all the little, things we've gathered over the year. And I was like, wait a second, my therapists are not that unique. They need this too. And so I would interview them about, there's beautiful ideas, and all of a sudden all this information would come out, and I was like, hold on, let's structure this, let's break it up, let's make it digestible, let's make it where a therapist could just use this as a cookbook. And when you think about executive functioning, it is being able to organize information, know what's important, know where one piece fits to make an outcome, right? And when you talk about executive function, we have to talk about the foundational components. There's foundational components and there's advanced components. And listen for 2 future episodes in this executive functioning series. There's a whole series on executive functioning because I'm super passionate about it. And it can be impacted by ADD, autism, OCD, PANS, anxiety, depression, dyslexia. I mean, most dyslexics get misdiagnosed with ADHD when they just have an executive functioning issue. So let's talk about briefly what are the foundational skills. Number one foundational skill is something called response inhibition. Fancy word. All it means is you're controlling yourself. So you're able to control your responses, and you're able to think things through without being impulsive, right? If we don't have that, nothing is going to be built. Okay, this is the foundation. It also includes working memory, emotional control, flexibility, sustained attention, and starting tasks. You may be like, bing, bang, boop, bang, boop, bop. Oh my God, Roseann, all these things my kid struggles with. Well, they've got an executive functioning problem, and it might not be from ADHD. So, when I mention this long list of things, why would kids struggle with this? Because somebody who's anxious or depressed or has OCD, their mind is occupied elsewhere and they're not present. They also may, their future thinking skills, people with great executive functioning see results, right? So as soon as I mention, I'm even when I did this, doing this podcast, right? I know what I want to do with this podcast. My goal in this podcast is to give you solutions. We are making mental health a whole lot harder than it has to be. So what did I do? So I broke it down by the most common issues and I categorized it like, what are the solutions that parents need in their hand? I want you to know that you are the power. No parent is like a caregiver. You always have the power. You do never give that to anybody else, whether that's me or it's a doctor. You've got the power, and that is all in your hands and in your control, and that's okay. And we need to give you those resources and those tools. That was my outcome of this podcast. I see the results, and I'm seeing families really creating a different life, really seeing happy families, right? Because I'm all about a calm brain and a happy family. And that is so important. So when we are talking about executive functioning, these set of skills, right? They are different. Attention is important, but is not the same as executive functioning. It's all about seeing that outcome. And what we need to do for kids, and we're going to talk about it in this executive functioning series, is how do we build that, right? So working memory just doesn't pop up. Yes, some of us have better working memory than others, but it's actually, these are skills that can be built just like a muscle, right? Certainly, if we're not regulating our emotions and our behaviors, so behaviors is that response and inhibition, emotional control, a real foundational skill, we're going to run into a lot more problems. And when we think about the difficulties with task initiation, which is a very, very common problem. So, putting your clothes away, starting playing a game with your sister when you really should be off of your device, or reading a book, switching gears, transitioning can be a problem. So executive functioning is different than attention. It is a brain skill. These are skills that are outside of intelligence, but they are all layered together. We know that smarter kids can compensate better and maybe aren't identified with these difficulties until later. Kids with executive functioning issues really start to show their difficulties when they have to manage a lot of tasks at once, when you have to have that flexibility, which is a foundational skills to switch between tasks. Like, this is why we saw everybody struggling in the pandemic, because in one moment they had to make pancakes for everybody and then have a business call and then help with homework. We are not superhuman. None of us should be amazing at that. But with structure and organization, you were much better at it. And it's the same way with the brain. When we teach structure and organization, we make the implicit explicit. We help kids do better in school. Listen to the rest of this series about executive functioning. It's going to open up your mind, help you to understand that your kid isn't lazy. They're not stupid. They're not doing things on purpose. It's not like they can't listen. It's really about the brain and helping to enhance their capabilities and direct skill set teaching. So I hope you enjoy this series.